Welcome to this week's episode of Two Guys on Politics with co-host former Illinois Congressman Bill Lipinski and myself, columnist at the Southwest News Herald, Ray Hanania. It is July 11, 2025, and this is season 4, episode 17. We invite you to subscribe to our latest episodes, which are broadcast on YouTube by visiting twoguysonpolitics.com. My co-host, of course, is Bill Lipinski, who served as Democratic Committeeman and Alderman of Chicago's 23rd Ward for many years. He was elected to Congress in 1983 and served through 2005. He currently writes the Right from the Center opinion column at the Southwest News newspaper group. And I covered Chicago City Hall from 76 through 92. And I write mainstream opinion columns for the Southwest News newspaper, as well as Middle East columns at arabnews.com. You can get all my information at hanania.com. We got several topics that we're going to talk about today in a new format. So we're going to do two segments. We do this intro, then we do two segments, Bill and I. Segment one, we're going to talk about the Ukraine war and is Trump doing enough? What needs to be done and how is it going? And then at the end of that segment, Bill is going to read his column from the Southwest News newspaper group, and he and I will talk about it for a couple minutes, and then we'll take a break. And then segment two, we're going to talk about the violence from the left directed at ICE over these immigration, illegal alien crackdowns. And then I'll do a little short column, and Bill and I will talk about that. So we want to share with you the things that we're writing, that Bill and I are doing, and make sure that you're able to pick up on it. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will address the Ukraine war in our first segment. We'll be right back right after these messages. And welcome back to Two Guys on Politics. This is Ray Hanania with my co-host Bill Lipinski. Bill, how's everything going? How are you?
Well, I'm doing very well, Ray. I hope you're doing well also.
Yeah, it's a busy week and a troubling week. You know, every time I hear the headlines and I see the paper, the Russians, they were sending like 100 drones. Now they're sending 800 drones. They were doing it at night. I was looking back at the history of the beginning of World War II. And one thing I learned, by the way, about that is that it was the Japanese that really started the conflict when they attacked mainland China. They went after Chiang Kai-shek, Mao Zedong, and all that stuff between 1936 and 1937. And then they reached out to Hitler to create a pact so they could protect themselves because they were worried that they might be attacked by one of the French and the British. And the British and the French didn't want to fight with the Japanese. They kept saying, no, 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 we're not going to do anything. And eventually the Japanese and Hitler and Mussolini created their pact based on really the Japanese launching their war to take over mainland China. Now, we never say the war started in 1936. We only say it really started when Hitler invaded Czechoslovakia and Poland.
Well,
You
actually,
know that
we say it started when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, as far as we're
right.
concerned.
You're right. We even wait from the U.S.
Right.
standpoint. It's like December 7th, 1941. And I'm thinking, wow, that's like 4.5 years after this world conflict started. And part of the problem was that the British and the French, they were still suffering from World War I, and they didn't want to get into another war. So they let the Japanese walked right out of what was it? The League of Nations. When the
Yes,
League of
absolutely.
Nations condemned them, and the Japanese said, "So what? Do something about it." They left, and I'm going, that's what started World War II. Our failure to stand up.
Well,
Isn't that what we're doing in Ukraine? We're
well,
failing.
let me get back here to World War II, though, because I'm a student of World War II, and I just want to make a couple of minor corrections. You have the general story down very, very well. But you can really say the war started in 1933
That's
when
true.
Japan invaded Manchuria. And
Exactly.
yes, okay.
But
So
I figured that's like seven. You're absolutely right. It's just that I thought, okay, that's like 7 years before we claimed World War II started. And I thought, okay, 1933 to 36 was like a ramp up. They did invade Manchuria, and then but they were so brutal,
yes, they
in
were.
the way they destroyed and murdered people. It's much like what the Russians are doing in Ukraine. They don't care. They're just going to kill civilians. And
Right.
that's what the
No,
Japanese did.
you are absolutely correct. In two things. One, the guy that planned the attack on Pearl Harbor, Admiral Yamamoto,
Right,
said that if he caught the aircraft carriers at Pearl Harbor, then they could go on a rampage for probably a year and a half. But he
right,
couldn't guarantee victory after that. He said if he didn't
right.
catch the aircraft carriers at Pearl Harbor, which he didn't, that he could go on a rampage for 6 months. But in 6 months, there would be a battle fought someplace in the Pacific, which the Japanese would lose, and they'd be on
Wow.
the defensive all the way back. And that's exactly what happened. In May 1942, the Battle of Midway, the American fleet beat the Japanese fleet, and they retreated continually from that point. Another interesting thing is that when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, Adolf Hitler didn't know anything about it. He was quite surprised, quite shocked. But
Yeah.
he had a treaty with the Japanese to declare war on America. Well, he
If
vacillated for a day or two, and finally he decided, okay, I'm going to live up to my treaty obligation. And he declared war on the United States. And he also said at that time, now that we've brought the Americans into the war, we'll never win it. So
wow,
it's a couple of
wow,
interesting
and yeah, it
history.
is. It is fascinating because I was just going back over it, and I there was one other aspect that I thought was really important. After the Depression of 1929, when the stock market crashed, and we were struggling, the British and the French were struggling even more because they were still struggling through World War One, getting
Right.
back on their feet. And what they did was they cut their budgets for their fleets. The British completely trimmed back their ships, their naval forces, allowing the Japanese to become the most powerful naval fleet in the world in the 1930s, which
Right.
empowered them to go ahead and invade Manchuria and then expand, their very destructive, horrible things. Canton, there were all these different places where they massacred millions of civilians and brutally. I mean, it just was horrible what the Japanese did, but we don't hear about that much, before
Well,
they attacked us at Pearl Harbor, and they made us feel guilty that when we dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they said, well, but we forget how vicious at that time the Japanese military and government were.
Harry Truman never felt, sorry for it. He was very happy that he did so. He
Good.
said, if it saves one American life and I kill a million Japanese, they deserve it.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't and when I look back at that, it worries me because I see a very similar pattern with the Russians. We're just not taking them serious enough, and it took 4 years, and probably more to get to a formal World War II. And I'm wondering if that's the trajectory we're on today. Are we headed toward a World War III because we're not doing enough to stop the Russians with their access with the North Koreans and the Iranians and this new technology with these drones?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know where this war is going between the Ukrainians and the Russians, okay? Everybody thought the Russians would win it in 2 weeks. Didn't
Right,
happen. The Ukrainians
right,
put up a great fight. We've helped them out. The Europeans have helped them out. But we've only helped them out up to a certain point. To me, our position has been all along, we want to bleed the Russians as much as possible. We don't want to give the Ukrainians too many weapons, though,
right.
because we don't want them to inflict too many casualties upon the Russians, because the Russians might really get mad at us then and want to spread the war. Okay. So I think we've been using the Ukrainians to keep bleeding the poor Russians. I think that what do you call it? The Europeans are doing exactly the same thing. Now, according to what I heard yesterday, uh, our president is finally upset with Putin to a degree that he's going to
Finally,
do something drastic on Monday.
yeah,
Knowing him, he tells us on Friday he's tired of Putin. Putin, he wants war. He doesn't want peace. Monday, we're going to do something really severe. Come Monday, he'll say he talked to Putin over the weekend, and
and we
maybe
just
Putin is going to straighten out a little bit here. Unfortunately, I think that's what's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong, because we have to stand and we have to stop the Russians. But it's going to take an awful lot of our treasure, not our manpower, but our weapons, our money. And the Europeans, they've got to kick in. I mean, the only European countries that are really kicking in a great deal is Poland, because
right,
Poland, they're going to be next, and then
right.
Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, because they feel they'll be, they're on the front lines.
Yes,
Yeah, but
yeah.
I've said from the day that war started, I said, what is our end game? Now, I have
Right,
flown the Ukrainian flag out in front of my house since about a week into the war,
right.
because that's as quickly as I could get one. So I've been with the Ukrainians. But more and more people I talk to are Americans are just sick and tired of this, and they don't want to hear about it anymore, and they just want it to go away, which means there's less and less support for the Ukrainians, which I think is a terrible mistake. Just like you said, going back, the Second World War was allowed to erupt to the degree that it did because too many people didn't stand up. They just continued to pacify the Germans, pacify the Japanese.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when I was looking back at it, I thought, these are really connected. What the Japanese did leading up to the war set the stage to empower Hitler to believe that, hey, the British and the French aren't responding to the Japanese. They're not going to respond to us. We're more powerful and we're right in the neighborhood. We actually empowered the Nazis, by not doing anything the first time there was a crime. Are we empowering the North Koreans, for example, to do something? We have no idea. And I agree with you that we really need a clear, decisive, strong policy. And we get this 7 day a week Trump presidency where Monday is different from Tuesday and Tuesday is different from Wednesday. He's happy, he's unhappy. He can't focus on anything. And he goes from he throws all the dice in the air, and if one of them lands on a 7, he focuses on that, and he ignores the other ones that didn't roll right. That is not leadership. That's
No,
really
not at all.
chaotic.
No.
All right, and listen, so we're both in agreement that we need something because you're right. Trump, I remember he said, I'll have this war over in 24 hours. He kept
Right.
saying, remember the 24
Oh,
hour
yes,
thing?
absolutely.
I don't know. History is not going to be very kind to Trump after this administration, which
I would
means the
not,
only
I
option
would
he
not
has.
think so.
That's why I think his only option is become a dictator and take over and eliminate the Constitution, because that's the only way he's going to stop this negativity
Please,
and
please.
his legacy. But now our new uh, part of our segment, Two Guys on Politics. each of us, you and I both write columns, each week, every other week. And what we're going to do is showcase and highlight one of those
Right.
topics. So your column this week, why don't you go ahead and read that? And then we have time for it. And then you and I can talk a little bit about it, to go through it. So go ahead, Bill, the title, and go ahead and
Very
read it.
good. Okay, my column is called Right from the Middle. Uh, Between the United States Supreme Court finally striking down affirmative action, or as I have always called it, reverse discrimination, a while back, and the Trump administration moving to eliminate DEI in critical race theory, our land of the Pilgrim's Pride is returning to the land of freedom and liberty and opportunity for all its citizens. The land of opportunity for all is back in the United States of America. Just last week, the Supreme Court struck another blow for the American way of life that permitted our citizens to build this vast wilderness into the most powerful, charitable, and Christian republic this planet has ever seen. The court ruled in favor of a woman who was discriminated against at her job because she was heterosexual. The court ruled unanimously. Yes, believe it or not, the United States Supreme Court ruled unanimously that she had been discriminated against. The decision effectively lowers the burden of proof required for people who are members of a majority group, such as white or heterosexual people, to make discrimination claims. Unfortunately, this decision and the previous Supreme Court decision has come far too late for many American citizens that have been deprived of job opportunities, job promotions, greater economic security, in more prestigious positions. Perhaps we could look into compensating these individuals for what their government had actually done to them for many, many years. Right from the beginning, I believe that DEI was nothing more than affirmative action under the table, a way to circumvent the law of the land. You can also put critical race theory activities into the same category. All of this was at the expense of the white working class and the first generation white students attending college. So many of these people were driven out of the Democratic Party because of these policies. Today, they form the basics of President Trump's support. The three places where DEI was implanted the most strongly and did the most damage to our land of the free and home of the brave are employment in the federal government, influence in higher education in countless ways, and in contracts awarded by the federal government. Just about all of this was done by President Obama and President Biden's executive orders. I believe the Trump administration will soon root out the last vestiges of the evil effects of affirmative action, DEI, and critical race theory that has had an enormously negative impact in our land of liberty. Contrary to contributing very, very significantly to the divide that exists in our country today, a divide that somehow we have to bridge. Thank you very much. Until next time, a fellow American.
Great column, Bill. Of course, the far left is going to attack you and just
No
paint
question
you in a
about it.
terrible way. The
Yes.
far right will think that you're not tough enough. And then the people in the middle, I think, are so scared of both sides that we don't hear them, as often. But I
I
think you
think that's
make a
true.
great point. I think you make a great point about, we can't correct discrimination by being discriminatory.
Absolutely.
Just because someone is a majority or a white person, they shouldn't be discriminated against simply as a means of making life better for somebody else who may not individually have experienced active discrimination, but whose ancestors or relatives experienced discrimination. So I agree. I think, racism is wrong. I think discrimination is wrong, but it shouldn't be. It's being politicized, by both sides. On the one side, it's being politicized to get more, and not just balance and fairness, but to get a compensation. They want to shift the balance. Right now, it's them saying whites discriminate against people of color. Now they want to change it so that people of color discriminate against whites. They're doing the exact same thing, or they're trying to do that, and I think it's wrong. So, not a lot of people are writing about that because they're afraid to, but I think you did a great job with it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I am sure that, I have said to you originally when I met you, and for a long time, I thought you were an Italian. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought Hanania was Italian. Okay, fine.
Yep.
I was surprised to find out that you weren't Italian. Okay. It made no
So are
difference.
a lot of people.
It made no difference to me that, you weren't Italian, but I am sure that you have been discriminated against because you were not Italian. You were an Arab. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I was just talking to somebody the other day about explaining that, racism, there are two levels of racism. And I hate to just use the word racism, but I don't know any other label that uses a foundation. But 90% of the people who look at me, let's say, for example, and say, he's an Arab, I don't like him, they're saying that because they don't know me, they
Right.
don't understand me, I'm different. They may fear in their mind, what they think I'm going to do without really knowing what I want to do. And really, maybe 10% or 15% hate me because I'm Arab. It doesn't matter what I say or do, they're just going to hate me. And so the real racism really comes down to a small group of people, percentage. And the majority of what we think is racism is really just misunderstanding, not communicating properly, not understanding and respecting each other. If I have a preference, that doesn't mean I dislike something else. So, we're not accepting of what we should be accepting of. And we jump to, the worst conclusion before we even know what somebody is,
Well, I'll
standing.
tell you, anyone that discriminates against you, if they ever knew your background or your family's background, they will
Sure.
realize that you are part of the great American success story. You have lived the American
Oh,
dream.
yeah.
You have contributed very, very significantly to the good of this country. I think it's terrible that people will look at you, although I don't think, I still say to you, if you wanted to, you could have passed for Italian.
Yeah, and I will say that when I talk to people, that I tell them that if someone attacks me and says, "Oh, you Arab," because there was one alderman, I won't mention his name, that we both know from the Southwest side. He goes, "Oh, you Arab," he said that, and I remember saying something in response, because I was covering him. I was a little surprised. I didn't know what to say. And I said, I served during the Vietnam War. My brother was a U.S. Marine. My dad and my uncle served during World War II. What did you do? This was an alderman, not from our circle. It was from somebody else. And I said, did you serve in the military? Did you defend this country? And I tell you what, I learned that whenever someone comes up and criticizes me, I throw that in my face because 99% of the time, the people who are racist against me never served in the
I'm sure.
military,
I'm
and
sure.
it shuts them up.
Mhm.
All right, Bill, I think that's a good column. That right from the middle is the name of Bill's column. It runs in the Southwest News newspaper group, which I believe that people can go online and read it there. So I got to talk to the editor and make sure that they're running those columns online so we can find them all the time. I'll double check with them that week.
That's good. I'm,
All
I'm
right.
happy. I'm happy to hear that.
All right. Let's take a quick break. And then when we come back, let's address this issue about the rising violence from the left against the ICE crackdowns and against illegal immigrants. I'm Ray Hanania with Bill Lipinski. We're here at Two Guys on Politics. We'll be right back right after these messages. And welcome back to Two Guys on Politics. I'm Ray Hanania with my co-host Bill Lipinski. Bill, I don't know, the violence associated with these ICE crackdowns, you think you want to blame ICE, but there's a lot of violence coming from the people that are opposed to what ICE is doing and trying to enforce the Constitution when it comes to who can and cannot enter this country. What are we seeing?
Well, I tell you what we're seeing. The left has continued to complain about Trump and his ICE people, his attorney general, right on down the line. But to me, the people who have been more violent has been the left. I mean, they tried to assassinate Trump during the campaign. Okay, that individual. That
Yep,
guy wasn't a right winger. He wasn't a conservative. Okay. And these people who are, and you cannot tell me that these people who are opposing ICE, are not being well funded by some left wing organization
right,
or some countries such as Russia or China, or North Korea. I believe that there's a lot of their money flowing in. I mean, how can you get all these people out, common, ordinary American citizens who I don't believe care one way or another of what ICE is doing? They're out there demonstrating. I think they've
right.
been compensated in some way, shape, or form. And once again, the thing that bothers me most about it, it continues to divide this country more and more and more.
Yeah, and I hear when I watch these things, I see that the left, it's like using the issue of illegal immigrants as just one point of attack against Trump. They're using it as an instrument, a strategy to get him. And I think it's more about taking out Trump and the right. And I'm not saying they're wrong because I think Trump feeds into that and gives them justification
Oh, I,
to
I
hate his
agree.
policies. He's
Yes.
fueling it, but it's not a genuine fight for rights. It's more or less, this is the issue. Let's go after him. If this one doesn't work, let's add abortions, to that, and the right, quote unquote right to life, or the quote unquote the right to for a woman to choose. They'll drag in whatever issue, and instead of making it a productive discussion about these issues, we end up turning into a political battle over these issues. So we never resolve things like abortion or right to life. We never resolve it because it's become a political battlefield. We never resolve the issue of guns and their role in violence or
Well,
the
everything is
crime.
political now. It's not just
Yes,
an issue that, you have an opinion, I have an opinion. Now, if you have an opinion different than my opinion, it's political. Yeah, you could say I'm a dictator. I can say, you're a socialist. I mean, we've never had that kind of discussion in this country before. That's what concerns me so very, very much. And then you have a candidate in in New York, probably going to be the next mayor of New York, who says he's a democratic socialist. He wants free transportation. He wants free daycare. What is that word? Free. Somebody pays for it, right?
yeah,
Socialism works as long as you can use other people's money.
yeah. Now, of course, I like Zoran Memdani, and I'm willing to overlook his excesses. And I redefine the term socialist in his terms, as opposed to, we talked about this last show, in terms of the old definition that we have of socialism. But I think he's the product of what's wrong with our political system today. And he
No
may be
question
taking
about it.
it to an excess. I mean, I like what he represents, that he's more in the closer to the middle than the far right or the far left. But, and I don't believe he is necessarily far left, because there's certain things that he's doing that the far left doesn't like. But I see him bringing us back away from the traditional fighting that we're having, and I'm hoping that that changes. That's actually part of my column that we'll do, but once we're done with this topic
Yeah,
about
because
ICE,
I have some things to say about your favorite candidate for mayor of New
Elon
York.
Musk. Yeah,
No,
listen, as a historian of World War II, just holding your hand up straight out like this, okay, is not a Heil Hitler or Sieg Heil. So they, I don't know if people really are familiar. When Hitler did it, he just kind of did like a right turn signal. He'd go like that. And I'm not saying that's right, but what I am saying is that how we so easily use these horrific images to demean people rather than address the issues. So they attack Musk, for that rather than criticize his ideas, but don't
well,
demonize the
I'm
person.
prepared to criticize your candidate's ideas.
Yes, yes, I know you are.
I
That's
will
why I
say
think
this
it's
about him.
legitimate.
He's very charming. He's very personable. I'd love to sit down, have a cup of coffee with him, talk to him. I like Bernie Sanders. Bernie
Yeah,
Sanders and I got along very well when we
right.
were in the House, but he's a socialist. I'm a capitalist. I cannot come to terms with him, but I like him. I don't want to hurt him. He's entitled to his opinion. This is a free country, a capitalist free country.
And I think the real problem is the inability to come to compromise. So there's nothing wrong with hearing people on both sides, and they may be extreme in some areas, and I may disagree with it. But if they're willing to come in and compromise and come up with a policy that is fair and respectful to everybody and the Constitution, I think the Constitution is the Constitution. I may disagree with something, but if it's the law, it's the law. And we can't sit there and say, well, I don't like this law and I like that law. Let's change this law to make it more represent what I want to do. To me, that is where the problem is. And that's the kind of hypocrisy. Don't change and violate the law. Adhere to the law and let's discuss it, apply it fairly, and everybody gets treated the same. But
That's why this country has been so successful. We have always believed in the rule of law.
yes,
Now, I want to say something about your favorite candidate. If you take all his issues and put them together, it comes down to affordability.
yes,
He really is campaigning about the inability for people in the lower middle class, the working class, the poor,
right.
to live a good, decent life in this country because of the economic system. The Democratic Party has failed those people. The
Yes, they have.
Democratic Party used to represent those people. The Republican Party never did represent those
Right.
people. They don't represent those people today, even though the vast majority of those people are now supporting Trump because they think he's the savior because he gives them lip service. That's why, Ray, if this guy gets elected mayor of New York, let's hope, let's hope it works out.
Well,
I
people
just
seem to
exercise.
moderate. People, once they get in power, you usually see people moderate. They don't stay, the rhetoric we both know, we've seen how many elections and campaign rhetoric, it always goes to the extreme to excite your followers, not every race, but in some races. And then when you get in office, you kind of pull back, you tone it down, and you be smart. You're in office. The war technically is over, at least for 4 years. So you can start being smart. The good politicians calm down. It's the bad ones that continue the fanaticism. I think he's going to calm down. The one thing I do like, though, is he's not afraid to take on Israel. And I think that I'm a big fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene for president. Okay. I don't agree with everything she does, but she wants our money to be spent on Americans. She wants us to follow the law. And she wonders why every resolution in the House has to deal with Israel of a foreign country when there are not enough resolutions on veterans, the American poor, white, everybody, black, and whatever your race. I really like her. Not everything, but there are a lot of things that she says that makes me feel good. And I think she's the future. And I think she's part of this Musk third party movement. She don't know it yet.
She doesn't know it yet.
All
Well,
right.
I don't want to go down. I don't want to go down that road with you, Ray. I know how you feel. I know how strongly you feel about it. All I have to say is I am a supporter of Israel, and that's all. I'm not going to say anymore.
You've been brainwashed, Bill. You have no choice, and I sympathize with you from all that propaganda. And I blame the Arabs for not trying to brainwash you back. They didn't do that, so you only really get one side. But let me just say this. My parents are Christians from Palestine, and the only people oppressing us are not the Muslims. It's the Israelis that are taking our land, destroying our churches, and chasing us out of the country. So anyway, end of story. Let's go. And listen, this is there's an honest way to discuss these things,
Absolutely.
without being turned into like being accused of terrible things. I'm a big supporter of two states, Israel and Palestine.
Oh my.
I'm against Hamas. I think it's a terrorist organization, but I'm also against Netanyahu and the Likud. I consider them terrorists too. So, but unfortunately, we don't have common sense much or a middle ground where we can actually have discussions. It always goes to the extreme, not us, but outside there. All right, my column is
Yes.
Elon Musk's America Party has a future and a role to play in breaking the polarization between the Republicans and the Democrats. Now, rather than reading it, I'm just going to summarize it.
Okay.
And basically, I'm saying that it doesn't matter whether someone runs as a third party or not. There's no expectation that a third party candidate is going to become president of the United States. I have no, feelings that, yes, let's run a third party and elect a third party president. No, that's not the role of a third party. In my mind, Elon Musk's idea to run this America party is to break the stalemate and the polarization that the two-party system has found itself in, and where one party not only controls the White House, they control the House of Representatives, and they control the Senate. And if a third party can take votes away from the Republicans and from the Democrats, it would create two minority parties that don't have enough votes to control the House or control the Senate. And the president would really be much weaker and susceptible to having to compromise to get what he needs done. Although I'm not sure Trump is one of those people that knows how to compromise. He doesn't have a very moderate approach to common sense or sensibility. But I really do believe that, with 400 and how many members of Congress are there? 435 or whatever. They keep changing it every year by redistricting.
Yeah, I should know since I spent 22 years there. I think it's
Well,
400.
when you were there, when you were there, it was more. We had more congressional seats every
In
year.
Illinois.
They keep in Illinois, and they keep shifting around. I think it's 435, but I'll have to double check. But that's besides the point. If this party could win 20 seats in the House, they could help prevent one side from dominating and pushing through their legislation. They'd force them to have to reach out to the other side and get some consensus to move forward. And if the America Party forms, they would be less likely to compromise with the Republicans or the Democrats. So the Republicans would have to reach out to the Democrats, and the Democrats would have to reach out to the Republicans, I think, to get things done. And that could be the beginning of ending this environment that we've been in now for the past 12 to 14, 16 years of confusion and polarization and demonization. We're not talking about issues. We're really talking about politics and hate. So that's one reason why I support it. And there are some, and just a final note, there are some members of Trump's party who are not 100% behind him, like that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tom Massey. And I think there are about 10 of them that really didn't want to support his budget. And he had to call them up, those Republicans, and say, you don't support my budget. I'm going to put everything in to replace you with somebody who will in the future. And they all ended up signing. But there were 12 Republicans, I think, who had serious problems with Trump's budget. And they need an outlet for their expression that isn't bullied that and silenced because of bullying by the Republicans or the Democrats. So that's my column at Hanania.com. You can go read it there. I'm not saying Elon Musk is the greatest guy in the world, but I thought he came up with a good idea, and he has some great ideas, and he gets carried away, I think, a few times. But I don't, I think it's a good thing that on one hand he was a big supporter of Trump's, and now he's a critic of Trump, which means that he's in the middle someplace there, and only because he's fighting with the president, he's kind of pushed aside. So, what do you think, Bill?
Well, I'm all for a third party, and I think Musk is the man that can probably put it together because of the enormous amount of money that he has. Now, I don't want to see his money influence the candidate that the party runs. I want to see those people be true representatives of the individuals who elect them to office.
Right.
I don't think there's any way possible that a third party could ever get strong enough here to elect the president. But I do believe that they can elect many House members in many districts and perhaps some senators. Now, I'm trying to think of Teddy Roosevelt ran as a third party candidate, Bull Moose. He, in essence, caused Taft to lose and Woodrow Wilson, the Democrat, to become president. Okay. Some years later, fighting Bob LaFollette of Wisconsin, the senator, progressive Democratic senator, not the same. He was nowhere near as far left as progressive Democrats are today, but he ran as a third party. He hurt the Democratic Party and helped the Republican Party. So you have to be very careful on when you run somebody for president. But I don't see how the Democratic Party, ruled by the left, and the Republican Party, ruled by the right, ever come together. And when I was in Congress, Tip O'Neill, Bob Michels, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, Newt Gingrich worked together to accomplish things for this country. I have not seen any Democrats or Republicans working together, quite frankly, since Bill Clinton went out of office. And I think Bill Clinton was the smartest man I knew as president. I think he did a great deal for this country. By the same token, I think his conduct as president was reprehensible.
Right.
But, nobody's perfect. And I think that's saying a hell of a lot when I say that about Bill Clinton. But, we have to be willing to accept, just like Trump. I can't stand his personality, but he does many, many good things. And I wish that the Democrats could accept some of those good things. I mean, a situation in the border where we just let anybody come in, hundreds and thousands of people. I mean, that was treasonous as far as I'm concerned. And yet Joe Biden did it. Joe Biden was a decent man. I knew Joe. I liked Joe. I don't believe that he knew what was going on. But that's enough of that.
Well, let me ask you a question. What do you think would happen if the Democrats only had 48 members in the Senate, and the Republicans only had 48 members in the Senate, with the vice president being 49, I guess he could to break a tie. And the Democrats only had 212, which is, I think, what they have in the House. And the Republicans only had 212, and nobody has a majority. Wouldn't that be a good thing, though? What would that do if
I think it
neither?
would be terrific. No question about it. It would be terrific.
Yeah, and
I,
that's the point that I'm trying to get to with this third party thing. Jill Stein took a lot of votes away from Kamala Harris. And
yes,
I'm not sure if that was the reason why she lost. She had so many problems, but they want to blame Jill Stein for her losing. So a third party could take enough to make an impact. And the goal, I think, would be to prevent the Democrats and the Republicans from controlling both houses, either one of them. What circumstance what would we have to do if that happened? What do you think?
well, they have to compromise. I mean, if we're going to get
Right,
anything done, they have to compromise. I would hope so. I really don't know with the people who are in power, with the
right.
Democrats and the Republicans. They are so embedded to their own philosophy, their own position, that they may not compromise. The
They may
government,
change the Constitution. In other words, they like Trump keeps talking about changing the
there's
Constitution.
no way they're going to change the Constitution.
I
You know,
hope not.
no, that's not going to happen, Ray. You don't have to worry. Even
I
the
hope
Trump
not.
is not going to be able to change the Constitution.
I hope you're right. I don't know. I worry about that.
Well,
These guys in today's
I can,
world, it's scary. All right.
well, we live in a scary world.
Yeah, it
Okay.
is. We don't know. People, they're not following the law. People
But
aren't
some,
following the law.
there are a few people, such as us, quite frankly, who are trying to bring the left and the right together
Right.
for the good of the American people, because that's, the vast majority of the American people, 70%, I would say, are in the middle. Those are the people that we should be working to try to do things for. I have no problem with helping people who are down on their luck, permanently or temporarily. I just don't like people living off the government their entire life. That is terribly wrong. By the same token, the government has to be compassionate. And right now, I think we have extremes in both parties. Well, enough is enough. I can't, I get very emotional because I'm talking about a country that I think, gave me many, many opportunities that I would never have had anyplace else.
And seeing it fall apart. And I do think there's
Right.
certain aspects of it that are crumbling. It is worrisome. All right. I'm Ray Hanania,
I'm Bill Lipinski.
and we will see you next week here at Two Guys on Politics. We hope you enjoy the new format where we each pick a topic for the end of each segment from our columns and talk about it the way we do. We hope that adds a little interest into what we're doing. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk to you later.